So, welcome to Anthropology pre-course. What do you understand by pre-course? What do you understand by a pre-course? It's as new to you as it is to me. So, we are doing it for the first time to give students enough information before they take a decision about the optional. Optional is a long commitment, isn't it? So, unlike general studies, in optional, you either travel with pleasure or travel grudgingly with a single teacher. So we want to make that decision as an informed choice for all of you. So since we are going to be together for about, so we will have something like 16 weeks. Okay. We will have a 16-week program for optional. So before you take a commitment for 16 to 18 weeks of studying one subject with one teacher in great detail, we thought we will have something like a 4 to 5 day informal session where you get to know me, I get to know you, and we all get to understand the subject. That's the intention of a pre-course. So we will have 4 sessions. I think you all had the schedule, right? Have you looked at the schedule for this pre-course? We have planned 1 hour sessions for about 4 days. If needed, we will take on the 5th day as well. And the idea of this is not to have any strict instruction, so to speak. We won't get into serious discussions of anthropology or the subject right away. We will reserve it for next week. Until then, we will have some general questions. Today, I plan to give you an overview of anthropology as a discipline, as well as anthropology as an optional. So we will look at these 5 questions today first. From tomorrow, we will have discussion on specific larger questions which are related to anthropology. That's the course format I have in mind. Is this clear? Do you understand what is the pre-course and what is the nature of interaction in the pre-course and how we are going to do it? Are those things clear? We will have some 1 hour sessions till maybe Thursday, and if we still feel that there is need for some more time, we will take on Friday as well. And this is not going to be strict lecture into the subject. We are not going to dive deep into the subject yet. We will do that next week. I find all of you are very serious. Are you very scared of me or scared of the subject, or is it lunch that has made you very heavy and dull? I understand post-lunch is a very difficult session to take. That's why they give it to me, hoping that I will revive your spirits, which are otherwise put to good food. So, before that, yes, let me introduce myself. I am Harsha Mannava, and I am going to be your anthropology faculty. You can be assured of my academic credentials because I passed out of an IIT, the BTech, and topped my batch, and then worked for a multinational corporate firm called KPMG. I am an explorer by nature, so then I came here, and the exam was a very interesting experience for me because the exam opened me to the world of social sciences. I was until then a person who was into physical sciences. Luckily, the exam opened me up to social sciences, and I realized that's where my passion was. So I gave the interview 3 times, and parallelly I used to mentor a lot of younger junior students, and then I realized teaching was something I was really attracted to, connecting with young fresh students with a lot of questions. As my professor in university used to tell me, teaching is the best job because in no other job do you get to see fresh faces every year. Isn't that a benefit of being in a profession like this compared to sitting before a computer and sitting with people who you either like or dislike, but you have no choice and you must sail with them for the rest of your life. So teaching is fresh because you get to meet younger generation and a fresh face with in every batch. So this is where I found myself to be interested in, and luckily students have also found me as a good presence in this teaching arena. So that's where I got here. I've been teaching for about 5 years. I primarily teach anthropology and offer test series and other value addition courses. Along with that, I also teach whenever there is a requirement. I do teach other GS subjects like society, ethics, essay, and to understand anthropology, I had basically read sociology, political science, psychology, and philosophy as well. So you need not worry about the subject. You can be very assured that you're not going to study anthropology from a narrow lens of anthropology itself. You're going to study anthropology from a larger prism, from a larger intellectual base. So what you will not miss or what will not be a loss to any of you would be the core conceptual strength. And I had done some videos. Whenever I find time, I like to read a lot. So I have a mini library at home. And it occurred to me during the lockdown, because like most of you, during lockdown, I was also stuck at my home and good or bad, had to deal with it. And that's when I realized, until then I used to be lost in the world of books and knowledge. Then it occurred to me and some of my other colleagues here who suggested, why don't you share whatever you're reading with the students? They would benefit. Those who do not have the time or do not have the orientation to read books themselves, why don't we do videos of books which they themselves cannot read? So you can scan this QR code here. You will get access to a YouTube playlist of a book called Sapiens. Some of you must be familiar with it, others may not be so. You will get access to that. If you have any further doubts, or if you want to understand more about larger issues of world history or anthropology, you can just go through those videos. I just posted a link to just one of the video here. There are about 14 videos there, each about a half an hour, 25 minutes. And we covered each chapter, which otherwise takes a few hours for you to read. I covered the chapter in about 20-25 minutes with a lot of visuals. So that also helps you. You may be traveling in bus or coming in auto, and instead of wasting time, you can listen to some of these videos as and when you like it. So with that introduction, let us come to anthropology. I hope all of you got this handout, right? First, let me run you through this so that this also provides you with the basic framework for our discussion today. What do you have here? Have you gone through this? Yes, you have syllabus. Then please look at this. If you have not got it, please collect it from the desk there. I think some students have missed this. Yes, so what do you have? Syllabus, then suggested books, and there is a brief write-up on why anthropology is a good optional, and what is unique to anthropology here in law excellence. Why anthropology in law excellence? Then you have a micro schedule, a 16-week plan for how we are going to deal with the course. So this is a 16-week plan for how we will organize this particular course. Then some model answers. These answers tell you how our teaching approach and our writing approach are going to be different and unique and more relevant and more connected to the examination's needs. So I hope you are able to look at this handout, please. Yes? Right. Now, in this 1 hour session, we will basically have to deal with 5 questions. What are these 5 questions? Is this a good summary of what we will have to do? Or is there any question that you have in your minds which does not fit into this 5-point framework? First, we will look at what is anthropology. Next, we will ask, is anthropology a good optional? Is anthropology a good optional? Next, many students have this question. Does it help with GS? Then, why anthropology in law excellence? And finally, the structure for this course. That is the broad agenda for today. Let us begin with the big question here. What is anthropology? Yes? Your name? Yashwant Kumar. Yes, Yashwant. What is anthropology? Study of a human beings. Very good. What aspects of human beings do you study? Good culture, growth. Yes, your name. Yes, Lalita. What do you want to say? Physical evolution of humans. What do you mean by that? No, that's right. So what do you mean? Add some more. How we came from ape to whatever we are today. Right. But why are you sure we came from ape? There is historical evidence. Great. Yes? Based upon the evidence, you have an idea that he came from ape. Very good. And we are going to study how this transition happened. Interesting. Yes, anybody else? Like it or don't like it, my class will be very interactive, please. So you are forced to participate. There is no choice because you can't escape from me for 2 hours. So you might as well cooperate. Isn't it so? Either you like it or not, you're going to be here for 2 hours every day, 5 days a week. So you might as well cooperate with my way of doing things. That is to participate and interact. Yes, so what is anthropology? We have some responses from Yashwant and Lalita. But they're right, but they're not complete. How else can we complete their answers? Yashwant said it is study of human beings. Yes? Ishak is already an advanced student, so Ishak will not participate. He has attended a course already. So, for the benefit of other students, Ishak will not participate in this first round of discussions. Okay, Ishak? Is that fair? Yes. What do you understand by anthropology? So, Yashwant is saying it is study of human beings. Lalita is telling us it is about studying how we became the physical evolution of human beings. That's what she told us. What else? Yes, your name? Yes, Vasu. What is it? Caste system. Okay. Study of how marriages happen. Study of caste. Okay. What else? Who is that? Yes, your name? Kalyan. Yes, Kalyan. Study of Indian culture. What do you mean by Indian culture? Yes? What comes under that everything? Can you use some words to describe that everything? Okay. Our Okay. Anybody else? I'm not asking you to be right. You're not going to be punished for not being right. The exam is still far away where you'll be punished for being wrong. But here you can relax. Yes? Your name, please. Yes, Priyanka. Okay, let me help you with your paradox. How is anthropology different from sociology? Sociology is mother of anthropology. And history is the grandmother of everything else. Okay, that's one way to look at it. But many do not use the adjective mother, but they describe them as sister disciplines. They are looked at as, they are perceived as sister disciplines because they share a lot of common themes of study and research. So since they are very common and some of you have already used the words culture, society, let us try to understand this. Let us try to understand anthropology by comparing it with sociology. How does anthropology differ from sociology? Some students give a very easy answer. Anthropology is more scoring. So that's the exam point of view, but in terms of the subject point of view, how do you look at anthropology? How is it different from sociology? Or let me ask you even simple question. So Lalita told us it is about physical evolution of man. So the journey from ape to man. The journey from ape to man. This is one response we got. But Vasu, Yashwant, others have told us that it involves study of caste system, study of marriage. Don't you see that these seem like two different modes of inquiry? One, this basically seems like you're going to study something about biology and related concepts. Isn't that so? Yes? But fundamentally, don't you think this question is different from studying marriage or studying caste? This seems like they are related, whereas this seems like it is something else. Isn't that so? They seem like they are different things altogether in a way, don't they? So what is the common thing that is connecting of both of them? That is, both of them are related to understanding human beings. The common link between both these aspects is that both of them are important to understand human beings. How are they important to understand human beings? The first thing tells us about the biological side of human being. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human? What do you think? What does it mean to be human in a biological sense? How are human beings different from the other aspect, the other species that are part of the animal kingdom? Yes? Thinking. And what is behind the thinking capacity? A jumbo brain, isn't it? Humans have the biggest brain for the given body weight. You can always say elephant has a bigger brain, but when you take a ratio of the brain weight to the body weight, humans have the biggest brains, and that is the root behind thinking capacity. And here we will see what are the forces behind this journey from ape to man. And do apes still exist, or are they extinct, or both? Apes are still, do they still exist, or they're extinct, or they're both? Both. Some apes have become extinct, some other apes still continue to live. What are the examples of the apes, the living apes? Yes? Gorillas, the great ape, chimpanzees, orangutan, if you are familiar with it. Orangutan, which is found in Bali and in Indonesia. So those are apes. So apes also live alongside us, don't they? In the same planet Earth. But who is clearly ruling the planet? Who is the boss? Apes or humans? What makes the difference? They are about, chimpanzee shares 99% of its DNA with humans. 99% of the DNA is similar. Then why is it that humans with just 1% difference in DNA, they are able to control so many things, whereas chimpanzees still live in the forest, or you see them in your circus? What's the difference? Yes? You're getting the question, right? And what were the forces that drove this journey? Why did ape evolve eventually to human? Why did people not remain at that stage? And in this journey, what happened? All those questions will be part of what we call as physical anthropology. All this will be part of physical anthropology. So that brings us to the next question, that is, and fine, we'll come there. So this journey, this question makes us understand what it means to be human and the biological past of human. That's one dimension of the analysis. One dimension of analysis is to study the past of humans' biology and why we are the way we are today. And if possible, where are we headed? Where are we headed in the future, if possible? That is one line of inquiry. A second line of inquiry to understand human beings. So this is one line. A second line of inquiry, human beings, is to humans, do they live alone? If you look at some of these animals, they live alone. But do humans live all by themselves? You may read in some fiction books of a man living on a stranded island and rebuilding everything from scratch. But in reality, how do humans live? Yes? How do humans live? Do they live all by themselves, or do they live in some other way? Humans live in what we call as societies. What do you understand by society? Yes? Group of people. Yes, society is a group of people. Isn't that so? Society is, after all, a group of people. But is it just a group of people? Or is it something else? Group of people, their beliefs, the group of people have certain norms of behaving. Like you don't come in shorts to the class, right? Just like you don't go in jeans to the beach, or you don't jump in a swimming pool with the jeans. You do not come to class in swimming shorts. So nobody told you so, but there are some common laws, common rules and norms of behavior that we all follow without needing any explicit instruction. So society involves people, their beliefs, and the set of rules by which they work together. That is all part of society. And when humans live in society, it also involves other things. It also involves people marry, and within society, people live in families. People live in groups called families. People have relatives. Don't you all have relatives? You have kinship. Kinship is a set of norms which governs who you see as relatives and with who you bond. All those are part of kinship. And there is other aspects to your social life also. What are the other aspects to your social life? Marriage is an aspect. Family is an aspect. Your relatives is an aspect. What else? There are other things like, do you celebrate festivals? And when you are in crisis, do you go to a god? The form of the god can vary. The place of worship can vary. But everybody has a belief that there is certain supernatural power at work. The name, the place, the means through which you worship that supernatural power may vary depending on your faith. But everybody acknowledges, by and large, except for atheists. Even atheists define themselves with respect to a god. They are non-believers. Non-believers of what? A god. So even there is a concept of God. So people also have religion. People also have religion. What else? People also have troubles with each other. They don't live in harmony. People also have problems with each other. So they need a set of political rules to help them arrive at compromise. They need to have a mechanism which helps them solve a dispute. Isn't that so? So people also have political systems. People also have political systems. And to make any of this work, people should first have a means of earning their food, right? People should have a means of earning their livelihood. That is the economic system. So, to study human being, you have to also study all this. You have to study all this as well. Because human, after all, does not live like other animals in a very isolated state. And he does not live just by depending on nature. Human lives through all these systems of cooperation and all these elaborate systems of doing things. So to study human, you have to study this as well. So anthropology, anthro means human. So anthropology, study of human beings, very true. What is sociology? Socio, study of society. Sociology is about studying society, whereas anthropology is about studying human beings. That is the difference. So sociology focuses only on this aspect. It does not pay attention to the other aspect. Anthropology studies both. That is the fundamental difference between sociology and anthropology. So that leads us to the next question. How many branches do we have? So anthropology has 4 branches. Anthropology has 4 broad branches. The first branch, the major branch, is called as social anthropology. Social anthropology. Social anthropology studies things that we just discussed: family, marriage, kinship. If you look at your syllabus, you will find all this on the second page, 2.5 to 5. From 2.5 onwards, you will find these things. Do you see those words there? Marriage, family, kinship, economic organization, political organization, religion. Do you see all those words here? Yes. So that is one aspect of what we are going to study. Next, we are also going to study, look at 1.5 and 1.6. What do you see in 1.5 and 1.6? Yes? That is part of biological or physical anthropology. Biological or physical anthropology. What do we do here in biological as well as physical anthro? Here we address those questions which we raised in the first. How did we end up coming from apes to human? And after we became human, are all humans similar externally? Do people look similar, exactly the same? People are different, right? Somebody from Africa looks very differently from somebody from Asia and somebody from the Americas. They don't look same, do they? They're clearly very different. And even here in a small classroom like this, do all of you have the same level of immunity? For example, we saw that during COVID, right? Some were more susceptible, some were least susceptible. So people are different, not just in the way they appear, but in many other ways that we cannot see. Like levels of immunity. Do you know by looking at a person whether he has strong immunity or not? He may look healthy, but if he gets the viral infection, he may collapse. So people also differ in ways that we cannot see. Blood groups is another example. Do everybody in this classroom have the same blood group? Can we say that everybody has the same blood group? Not really, right? Changes. So physical anthropology studies how human body evolved from the past to what it is today, and how are humans in the present, how do they differ from one another, and are these differences, can they be studied from a significant evolution point of view? That is the focus of the second branch, that is physical anthropology. Third, we also have archaeology. Third is archaeological anthropology. Now, what is archaeology? Are you aware of archaeology? When I use the word archaeology, the first thing that comes to many students' mind is Indiana Jones movie. So what is archaeology? It is not just Indiana Jones movie, but archaeology is study of excavations. When I say archaeologists, what should come to your mind? People digging up to discover some hidden evidence of the past. So we study archaeology as well. Here we will study how people lived in Stone Age, how people used to live in Stone Age, and from Stone Age way of life, how did we shift towards agriculture? In Stone Age there was no farming, isn't it? People used to live as hunters and they were nomadic. From being a hunter-gatherer and being nomadic, how did people develop agriculture, and how did they finally end up with such huge cities and urban way of life? That's how we shifted, right? From Stone Age, you were hunter-gatherers for a long time, and then there was gradual shift towards settled agriculture. People began to live in one place and people began to cultivate, that is agriculture. From agriculture, they slowly began to build cities and towns. And eventually we are seeing this huge growth of urban civilization that we have today. So archaeology studies primarily those distant past. History studies recent past. What is the beginning of history? History begins where in India? Where does history begin in India? Indus Valley civilization. And how old is Indus Valley civilization? Yes? Yes, Dalita, how old is it? Dur ki baat. How old is it? 2500 BC. That means 4500 years. What about the story before 4500 years? History is helping you understand the story from 4500 years onwards. Isn't that so? If you ask what is history, basically it is the story of the past 4500 years. That's what you study in your history, right? Ancient, medieval, modern. But what about the picture before the 4500 years? So picture abhi baki hai, isn't it? So what about the rest of the journey? So that study is done by archaeologists and not by historians. That journey is traced and that distant past is studied by archaeologists. So we have some portions of archaeology. This is a very minor concept. Here we will study how people lived, how they made stone tools and all these questions. Lastly, the fourth branch is linguistic anthropology. This is the fourth branch. Though this is an emerging branch and this is not relevant to us because our discipline of anthropology and especially for UPSC anthropology, this is not really required. So we don't have to pay much attention to this. We will study these two in great detail and we will study this with a small focus. So this is the scope of our subject and that is what we have here. So look at the syllabus. This whole syllabus can be broken down into how many papers? We have 2 papers. And in first paper, what do? In first paper, we study concepts along these lines. In the second paper, we study the Indian application, the Indian aspect of the same concepts. In the first paper, you study what is society, how is society classified. In the second paper, you will study caste system, Indian village. And in second paper, you will also study tribal people at great length. Who are tribal people? You would have heard about things like SC, ST, right? Scheduled tribes. Who are scheduled tribes? So these are people you call as, the Telugu word to describe them is, what is the Telugu word to describe? Girijanulu, Adivasi, isn't it? Adivasis or Girijan. So Girijan refers to, what is the meaning of Girijan? Jana means people, Giri means hills, people who live in hills. So anthropology in paper 2, we also study tribal people at great length. If you look at your syllabus from unit 6 onwards, the focus is going to be on tribal people. So this is how our syllabus is organized. So is the outline clear? Don't worry if you did not make sense of the syllabus fully today itself. You are just getting familiar with it. So, but the basic outline, is it clear? We have 2 papers and the whole subject has about 4 branches. Of those 4 branches, how many branches are very important to us? 3. The 4th branch is not so relevant to us. So that is about what is anthropology. So that helps us understand what is anthropology, isn't it? Next, we have to look at the other question. Is it a good optional? Is anthropology a good optional? What do you think? Before I tell you whether it is a good or not, you must be having some preliminary view of anthropology as an optional, right? Is it a good optional or a bad optional? If it is good, why do you think? I'm sure you won't tell me it is a bad optional. Why do you think it is a good optional? Yes. Okay, it is related to you, so you can easily understand it. You're not going to study about some abstract concepts like quantum mechanics or cell and cell properties or tissue culture. You're going to study about yourself. So studying about family is something we are already familiar with, right? You live in a family, you have kinship, you have relatives. So, and you all are familiar with caste system. Caste system is a reality in India. So you're not going to study about things that are totally distant and remote. So the relatability, the familiarity is one aspect. What else? What else do you think makes anthropology a good optional? Yes? Yes, Ishak. Ishak says it is scoring. Yes. Is it scoring? It is scoring. What makes it scoring? Yes? Limited syllabus. Okay. Mostly static. True. You must have heard some views from your friends or your seniors in hostels, in your PGs where you are staying, or your friends who already wrote the exam. They must have given you some perspective on this story. You must have watched some toppers videos already. Yes? Yes, the most important aspect. Anthropology is scoring because first, questions are direct, the syllabus is limited, and the content is something you can relate to. And many students find anthropology very interesting. Ishak is a proof here. He's coming to the course repeatedly. Isn't it, Ishak? So people have difficulty in attending one full course. But once you come to the subject, you develop a passion for it. So it is something you easily associate with. For example, things like subjects like political science, management, that calls for a lot of imagination. You have to be able to think about abstract philosophical concepts. There is no such demand in anthropology. You study about things you are already familiar with. So it is not going to be like your engineering, where you are forced to study about things which you could not see in your everyday life perhaps. So here it is simple. The syllabus is also static. In other subjects, especially subjects like sociology or political science and public administration, current affairs play a very important role. You need to be able to support your answers not just by whatever we teach here in class. You have to gather a lot of extra current affairs material on your own. So you get good marks only when you are able to supplement and support your answer with current events, which means the burden is more on you. As it is, you have to study 4 GS papers, essay paper, optional, prelims, mains, and then interview. On top of this, your current affair load gets further increased. Anthropology reduces your burden. It reduces your burden because the subject is largely static. There is very little in terms of huge current affair burden here. And questions are direct. Even until now, and there is reason to believe this trend is likely to continue for the next 4 or 5 years. So even if you are going to be around to take a few more attempts, this is going to be a good investment because you're not going to the effort you put in today to study this may help you 1-2 years down the line if you are still willing to stay here and take the exam in a few more times. That's the benefit. But in other subjects, especially in some optionals like geography and public administration, students are facing a lot of struggle because they have to look at the paper in the examination hall and they have to wonder what he's asking. They have to, after studying for 2 years, they have to look at the paper with blank faces in the examination hall because the questions are being framed to confuse and make it very difficult for the student. Now that's a very unfair thing on the student because after studying for 2 years and having read so much about the subject and where you have put your career at stake for this result, if you now feel that whatever you have read is not at all being asked and something that is not in the syllabus is appearing on the paper that day. And to be very frank, you will not match against somebody who is a 65-year-old who's sitting the paper. He has been reading the subject for a lifetime. You cannot compete with them. So based on their expansive reading, if they frame questions which are totally outside the subject's purview, then your chances at clearing the exam are reduced that moment itself. Whereas your friends with other subjects like Telugu literature, Kannada literature, they are able to sail through easily. Whereas you are being confused because of the paper's randomness. Anthropology doesn't fall in that category. You prepare well, you study well, you practice enough, you will be able to perform well in the exam. So with some optionals, you have that risk. You run that huge risk. This is more so with two optionals in the recent years, geography and public administration, which have become a huge risk. Despite a lot of effort, students are struggling in the examination hall to just understand the question. So anthropology does not put you there and it gives you good returns on the work that you put in. The only thing is you should be able to study the subject as a good student. That you can do. But despite doing that, if the paper is looking very odd, then it is beyond your control. You are helpless. That risk is not there with anthropology. So that makes anthropology a good optional for civil service exam. And the other reason for why it is also good is geographic reason. You are all in Hyderabad. Hyderabad is the anthro capital for India. You will not have the kind of anthropology coaching support system that you have here in terms of teachers, test series, materials, a set of peer group, friends and other competitors who study along with you to share knowledge and share notes. You will not have this kind of rich support system even in Delhi for anthropology. So if you are in Hyderabad, you are having the best coaching for anthropology that you can possibly get anywhere else. You will not even get the kind of support system you have for anthro that you get here in Delhi also. So for other subjects, Delhi may offer you larger audience, but for anthropology, that is not the case. People come from northern states to Hyderabad just to take anthro classes and go back. So many go to Delhi for other classes, but for anthro it is reverse. So if you are in Hyderabad, anthro is a good option because you are at the place which offers you the best support system for this optional. Don't worry because if you step outside Hyderabad, you will rarely find anybody else with anthropology. Only people in Hyderabad tend to take anthropology. If you go to Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, other cities or Chennai, you won't find many students with anthro. Since you are here and this happens to be the anthro capital, you tend to find a lot of students taking anthropology optional. If you step out of Hyderabad, you will not find many. So that is about why anthro is a good optional. Next, does it help with GS? What do you think? somewhere, but not everywhere. How does Anthro help you with your GS? Basically, the problem that many of you face when you take up GS is that you don't know how to write answers. Until, how many of you are engineers here? How many are from medical backgrounds? Medicine, pharma, veterinary sciences? How many from non-engineering, non-medicine backgrounds? You are from what degree? Arts, CAs? How many are from CA? No C. How many from degree? Yes. So majority happen to be from science backgrounds, engineering and medicine. And when you are from science background, what you lack is social science orientation. So anthropology first gives you that social science orientation, which is important for you to even understand history, polity and economy first. Next, it is an optional in anthropology that you learn how to write answers. You don't have the time to do that in your GS. Your answer writing technique develops only in optional and anthropology. And anthropology helps you across GS papers. First, your essay. Because in anthro, we study so much about underprivileged people. People who are weak, like the minorities, SCs, STs, even OBCs, the issues of OBCs. So we study the issues of poor, weaker sections and the deprived sections. So that analysis, that knowledge helps you in Indian society, helps you understand inclusive growth, poverty in economy, helps you in social justice. And in biological anthropology, we will study some concepts of genes and genetics that will give you superiority in SNT. In SNT, you will also have some biology topics to cover. Many students who study SNT from a GS point of view have a lot of unease with it. They don't feel like they are understanding it. But if you have anthro optional, since you will study it at optional level, you will have far more ease in handling biology part of SNT, for instance. And the exposure you get to various thinkers and you will also touch some philosophical aspects in anthro. This exposure to philosophical aspects will help you in your ethics paper as well. In ethics paper, frequently they ask questions on land alienation, displacement, or how do you deal with urbanization, how do you help somebody who is poor. For all this, the discussions we have in anthropology about weaker sections, poverty, some family and women, all of this will help you answer those areas. So the benefits are very clear. We cannot restrict anthropology's benefits to one area of GS. Like geography optional, you have geography in GS. But it is not like that. Anthropology's benefits is spanning across papers. And finally, when you get to interview, anthropology is, when you have anthropology optional at interview stage, the discussions are far more easier. Because this subject, like I said, is not so complex. And you will be able to answer any questions from here with relative ease compared to other disciplines. And the knowledge that you have here, the issues that we discuss in anthropology help a lot should you get a job and should you actually become an officer on the ground. If you look at some famous officers here in Telangana, all of them would have had anthropology optional. Smita Sabarwal, Krishna Bhaskar, Kartikeya Mishra, so many officers. Yes? Anudeep, the topper. So many have anthropology, and that also plays a role in your post-examination performance in the job as well. Because in anthro, you study issues on the field. How do you solve problems of people on the ground? That is the focus of anthropology. That's why when you land in the job, the it becomes far more simpler for you to handle the job and succeed in it with anthropology. If you have other optionals, you must start learning afresh. How do I solve a problem of a group of women who are facing poverty? How do I solve the problem of some tribal people? How do I help them increase education, and how do I deliver health benefits to them? How do I help some poor Dalit young youth get livelihood? You will begin to think about those problems for the first time with other optionals. Here, you would have had so much exposure to those issues already. It's not going to be a big new beginning for you in the job as well. So that is why anthropology has lot of takers as a optional. Next, why here at Law Excellence? What are you going to gain from taking anthropology here? How are we going to be different? You can look at, I try to put this in writing here. You can take a reading at this when you go back later. But let me just, what is unique to, on page 7, what is unique to Law Excellence anthropology? How is this going to be different? How is my teaching going to be different from other aspects? Like I said already, my teaching will be very interactive and very deliberative. You can watch some of those videos that I shared with you today. You will get a flair of the approach that I am going to take. You will get a flair of the approach that I am going to take for anthropology. And what is going to be in my approach? My approach will not be to give you mechanical discussion of issues. My approach will be to make you understand concepts. It will be to empower you. The idea is to empower the student. What do we mean by empower? You should have developed interest in the subject, and you should be able to identify what are the examination trends, and you should be able to know which sources to read. At the end of the course, you must feel that I have enjoyed the course. You should feel that today it's an anthropology class. You should be you should look forward to anthropology class. That is how I try to maintain my student relationship. You should not wake up and think, today I have to go to anthropology class. I have to finish the syllabus. God, I wish it were over quickly. So we do not let the student into that kind of a agony. We try to empower the student, and we try to make the student's classroom presence very rich. So the goal, my goal and my objective is to make sure that all of you not just understand what's going on, you should develop a passion. Anthropology must, whether you write the exam, whether you succeed in it or not, what I want you to be sure of is that anthropology should become a hobby to you by the end of the course. Even if you are not going to take this path, you should still think that I have understood anthropology. The time I spent in that classroom has made me really enjoy the subject. And even if you do not want to write the exam, you should still be able to read anthropology because you find it interesting. So the idea is to make the student enjoy it, learn the concepts, identify the reading materials, and empower him so that the student feels comfortable to read by himself or herself. When you like something, nobody has to run behind you, isn't it? Does somebody have to be behind you and push you constantly when you like something? You do it with lot of energy, right? Only when you don't like something and you still have to do it, that is when somebody has to push you from behind. Your parents, your elder brothers, your friends, they have to keep pushing you, do this, do this, do this. If you require pushing, it means that you're not really enjoying it, but you have to still do it. So you won't have that kind of a drama with Anthro. You will feel empowered by the end of the course. That is how we will structure it. So the discussion, the classroom will have detailed discussions of issues in a logical style. We will show a lot of videos. My classroom will have a lot of videos. Is it not, Ishak? How many videos did we watch in the last course? Around 50 videos. So we will watch many documentaries, we will discuss documentaries, and through that we will understand concepts. Instead of me trying to explain about people who you have never seen, some tribals who live in forest. You've never been to a forest, you don't know who they are. So we will have a lot of videos to make you feel all that through a lively format. So all these tools are being deployed so that you think, yes, I finally understand what I'm reading. You should not think I'm reading something, but I can't imagine what I'm reading. You won't have that trouble. So all that is what we mean by empowerment. Empowerment means student having confidence in himself and the subject, and student being able to pursue that subject by himself. So when you learn to enjoy working out, like running or going to gym, does somebody have to be behind you? You wake up in the morning, you hit the gym, and you're back on your own, right? Nobody has to push you. Empowerment by the end of the course. And anthropology will be a rich experience. I gave some of my students' feedbacks to you. You can look at their feedbacks and you can judge that by yourself. Next, how is the course structured? So how are we going to structure this course? So I gave this micro schedule as well, week by week plan. We have something like a 16-week plan. Usually, this is the maximum that we will need. Usually, we will finish in about 15 weeks. So we may not need 16 weeks as well. So there will be classroom instruction. I will give you notes in the classroom. You will get material or handouts. For the last batches, we gave handouts. Now you will get materials like this. You will get reading material, and we will also have a Telegram group where I will post the regular updates and where you can interact with me and your fellow students, where you can all share your resources and where you can ask me direct personal questions. All that will be on a Telegram group. You must have already have groups for GS and other courses, right? So likewise, we will have a similar scheme for anthropology where we will interact. So there will be classroom teaching with classroom notes, extra material such as these. So this is the material that one student gave me. She wrote the entire notes in about 4 volumes and she sent it to me asking for my suggestions on how to further improve this. So I got this morning. So I thought I will share it with you. So we will give this no material and I will post any new relevant research on the group, and I will also share all the videos that we show here will also be shared on the group, and there will also be sectional texts. So we are not going to just teach you anthropology and leave you at that, because why are you learning anthropology after all? You didn't come here because you wanted to become professional anthropologist, right? Anthropology is a instrument for you, instrument to get into the civil service. So to get into civil service, you need to be able to write whatever we are discussing. What is the point if you can enjoy the class, learn, feel empowered, but can't write a single thing? So it is equally important that you get writing training. You need to be trained in how to write answers. That's why in the handout today, I gave you some 5 model answers about how you can write answers to some anthropology questions. Go through the handout, please. Do you see that there are 5 model answers? Do you have them? Yes? Do you have 5 model answers? Yes. Do you see any interesting thing about those model answers? Do you see some diagrams or flowcharts there? Some bullet points. It is not just paragraphs and paragraphs, right? Do you see that the student has taken the effort to draw some diagrams, flowcharts? So this student also began like any of you. This is not my answer, this is the student's answers. This student began like a fresher, like any of you. And by the end of the course, she got to this level. So I gave these model answers so that you also gain confidence. You should be able to write like this. So if you write well, some of your answers will go into the next handout that I give to the next batch. So you can compete for who wants to get into the answers Hall of Fame. If you write well, I will next show to the next batch. Your answers will become the motivation for the next batch of students. That see, a particular student has begun to write, and by the end of the course she could write like this, and this is where we will take you. So there will be regular tests, sectional tests, and full tests as well, and I will personally evaluate them and give you my comments, and you can come and discuss any other writing issues that you may have. This year we are also planning to start a blog for anthropology, where I will post a question every day and you can answer in the comments, and by end of the day you yourself can upvote what is the best answer. I won't judge. You can judge which is the best answer among all the given responses. And I will also share model answers like these for questions. So the blog will help cultivate the answer writing habit in all of you. So that is the other new innovation we are going to do this year. So this is how the anthropology here in Law Excellence is going to be different, and this is how the course is going to be structured. So is this clear, please? Did I address all the 5 points that we raised in the beginning? Or do we have any? Yes, did we address all these 5 topics? Do you have any other questions? And here I gave a list of suggested books. In addition to the material that I give, this is a list of standard books, because I'm sure you will go back and discuss with your friends about anthropology, and when some of them start listing out some names, you should not be in the blind. LP Vidyarthi, Ember and Ember. So I want my students to feel confident while conversing with their fellow competitors about the subject. So I don't want my students to feel that they are behind others in any way. So I'm also giving you this list of books so that some just for familiarity, others are books which you will have to read, and I will suggest which are essential readings in due course of time as and when we start discussing more and more of the subject. So this is the list of books. Now, do you have any other questions that I must take? Do you have any other questions? Why don't you try to scan that QR code and see what videos do we have? So maybe you can get a flair of my teaching even before we begin the course from those videos. So do you have any other questions for today? We will again meet tomorrow. Tomorrow we will follow the schedule that I gave you. Tomorrow we will take one small topic and we will begin discussion around it, and we will see how to give you warm-up. So the whole pre-course is like a warm-up. What is warm-up? Before you run or start playing a sport, your coach gives you warm-up. What is warm-up? Yes? Hitting the body for what? Exercise. Yes. What are we warming up here? You're all sitting, you're not even making any move. We are trying to warm up your brains and your thinking pattern. So like I said, so that you get to know me, I get to know you, and we all get to know the subject. That is the intention behind this pre-course. So tomorrow we will take up certain issues and we will discuss those issues, and we will try to see how we can understand them. Nothing related to course, nothing very serious. Some small topics in anthropology. We will take them and see how we can understand those things. That is the agenda I have planned for tomorrow. But before we close today's session, I want to know if you have any other questions. Yes? Do you have any other questions, please? Any other issue that I have not touched already, which you would like to know? Yes, Ishak. Would you like to come and share your anthropology experience with me for the benefit of other students? Ishak is an old student, since he is here, let's see how what Ishak has experienced with anthropology in the past. Yes, Ishak. Yes, come up.
So good afternoon, sir. Actually teaches very well. Coming to
What's
the
your name? Tell them your name.
Yeah, my name is Ishaq. I took coaching of Harsha sir before lockdown, that is in the year 2019. Uh, Coming to the point of syllabus, like anthropological theories, sir actually touches the core of the subjects, like thinking power. Will get enough idea to think what the thinker is willing to say. And coming to the point of genetical part, biological anthropology, uh, I compare to other institutions, like they teach with other teachers who are from MBBS background, but then sir teaches with exam point of view, not like just teaching genetics like in for MBBS students. That's what I feel very separate from other coaching institutes or other teachers. And coming to the point of syllabus, sir covers the whole syllabus, and the course will be very well and enjoyable. That's it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishak. So any other questions, please? Anybody else? Do you have any other questions? We also do this. I'm planning this another initiative like this, where my previous students who are slightly seniors, I will try to connect senior students with junior students. You are all juniors because you are just beginning your coaching, right? So some questions, you may have some inhibitions or some fears in raising some questions with me. You may not be able to come to me with everything that you have. You may feel it is too informal to ask me something. Whereas you may not have the same fear with a senior student. You may feel that he will be able to understand your problem better, maybe. So we are also planning this new initiative like a buddy, a senior buddy, where you will be connected to some senior students with whom you can actually interact. Since they are preparing for a year or two already and they are ahead of you in the game, they will be able to share their experiences, and through their experiences you may benefit. They may share their mistakes, they may share some of their good things that they did and bad things they did, and all of that can become a very rich experience to you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, you don't have to do the same mistakes to learn the same lessons. They can probably share their benefits or their good experiences with you. So we will also try to create an environment or a platform where senior students will be able to reach out and guide the freshers and junior students, such that there will be a healthy learning environment for everybody, because seniors also learn from freshers. Freshers are with fresh minds, still unconditioned by the exam. So they will ask some very logical questions, because I myself learn a lot from some of my students. The kind of questions they raise, sometimes it is very surprising to me that I have not thought like this. So seniors will be able to benefit from the freshers' freshness. Juniors will benefit from the seniors' experience. So it can be a give and take, healthy give and take relationship. So we are planning to also build such healthy relationships so that everybody can collectively travel in this journey. That is the objective. So any other questions, please? You can feel free to ask anything. That's still far away. So first let us discuss anthropology. So during the due course of the course, I will bits and pieces share wherever the context helps us. But for now, let us not get that far, because we are still 1 year from writing prelims, I think. Isn't that how it is? Most of you are preparing for 22, very few for 21, but many for 22. So let us cross the bridge when it comes, and let us take things in a good stride. Any other questions about Anthro? Yes, your name please.
My name is
Sunita, yes.
This is the first time actually I'm just looking at the syllabus.
Right.
When I looked at, I'm still confused of whether to take anthropology or sociology or geography. Like these three things are there in my mind.
Okay.
When I looked at the terminology, like technical terms, I could see like chromagnon, Kant, Grimaldi, all these things, a lot of technical terms.
Okay.
So when I look at geography, it is like something similar, but when my mentors, GS mentors, they suggested me to take up with anthropology.
Okay.
So
I get your point.
basically
Get your
my
question.
background is I'm a journalist.
Right.
So I worked for 7 years. So with my journalism experience, I'm still confused whether to go for anthropology or geography or sociology.
Okay, I get your question. Very valid question. Yes. In fact, I was looking for that question. Students should raise this particular question. So it can be basically reduced to one issue. The larger issue at stake is that some say that medical students tend to have an edge in anthro. Is that so? That is the general question that is raised. Would your question fit in that larger question? That medical students seem to have, it seems to be a little on the biological side. Will I be able to learn? That's the question. So I keep getting this question. Those terms in the initial stage, you just have to know what the term means. So if you spend one class discussing those terms, and if I give you one handout about with meanings of those terms, your problem is solved. But therein lies the trap as well. Many students look at those terms and they turn away from anthropology. When they turn away from anthropology, here the problem is a relatively simple one. Having new terms and understanding what they mean and being able to learn it and write in the exam. But in other subjects, because it all looks familiar, it's deceiving. It all looks familiar, but ultimately the examination questions don't look familiar at all. So here, the barrier for non-medical students is that you will need some basic introduction, some basic hand-holding into some terminology. And if I have to make a list of all those terms, there will not be more than 25 to 30 terms. So you will have to learn some 25 to 30 terms, and you may need some revision of some high school biology. That too, 3 concepts. I do a backgrounder of bio backgrounder for the benefit of non-bio students. You need backgrounder on 3 topics to follow the discussion on biological anthropology. So the whole problem can be reduced to 25 terms, 3 backgrounders on 3 concepts, and this for 25% of the syllabus. That is the issue. But the challenge there is only about understanding these new things. Once you understand those new things, your job is done. In other optionals, it will all seem very familiar. But because it is familiar, the examiner does the ultimate job of asking questions which look unfamiliar. There the paper looks unfamiliar, syllabus will be familiar. Here in syllabus you may face some new terms, but once you develop familiarity, once you have a good teacher who can handhold you and let you cross that small stream, you will feel you will be on the other bank and you are safe. In the examination you will not have problem. That's why I think your mentors in GS rightly guided you towards this. Because in anthropology, the problem is about getting over those few initial fears, and they are easy to solve compared to the challenges in other optionals where nobody, even the teachers, are in blind spot. When teachers themselves are worried about how do we know what they ask, then they can't help students as well, right? Here, if you have good guidance, your initial teaching struggles will be quickly solved. Did I answer your question? So don't worry about any new terminology that you may have to see in the syllabus. It is just a matter of knowing 25 new terms. Just like when you're learning English language, you maintain vocabulary, right? You list down new words, you revise them and develop your vocabulary. Similarly, you will need to know some 25 new words and some 3 backgrounder concepts. Once that is done, you will not face problem with even the 25% of syllabus, that is physical anthropology. This whole story is about physical anthropology, which is about 25% of the syllabus. So for the 25%, you will need these 3 backgrounders and 25 new terms, and those will be clearly given to you. Don't worry about it. In fact, by the end of it, you will tell me more about it. So you need not worry about that aspect. Yes, any other questions, please? Please feel free to raise any issues. No other questions? The backbenchers, I barely see you. You're already hiding in the first class itself. Yes? Please feel free to raise any issue. Any questions? From the back, from here? Or are you comfortable? All right then, I'll be here. If you have any more questions, you can walk up to the dais and discuss in private. Otherwise, we will wind up today's session and we'll meet again tomorrow at, I think this is the institute's account. So we will wind up today and we will again meet at 2:30 tomorrow.